So building a consciousness of good, how to do that, how to do more of it than what perhaps you've done before. That's the theme today. First time I walked into a Science of Mind church, it was the Atlanta Church of Religious Science back in around, I think it was about 1985. And I went there because I had been in a 12-step program, and my sponsor said, you got to go add some other things to it. So I did, and I got there, and was in the midst of working on a doctorate in pastoral care and pastoral counseling, and I was struggling with the idea that there's all of these wonderful religions, and they all have their stories, and they're all part of some kind of cultural expression of what God is, what life's about, how it works. And I kept thinking there must be something behind that. And I've been writing about it and doing some research in the library about it, trying to find what that might be. I walked into the Science of Mind Church that Sunday and heard Kennedy Schultz talking about something called spiritual mind treatment, which sounded like bringing in the white coats guys. It wasn't. It was simply a very specific way of talking about prayer, and prayer that isn't about making God do something or getting God's attention, because obviously he's not paying attention. He is not paying attention. It's a he God up there somewhere. Not that at all. Instead, it's a process for changing our minds, building that faith, that thing that Maya was talking about, where our beliefs really do matter and manage our physical and experiences in the life and in the world. And I don't remember much about what he said, except in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is a bunch of hocus pocus, and I'm going to prove it real fast, and it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, I'm out of here. Because I'd already had a stint as a minister in another denomination, and I'd gotten pretty well burned out, and not only burned out on the activity of that, but in the belief systems of it. So I bought a little booklet by Raymond Charles Barker called How to Do Spiritual Mind Treatment. And I think it just says treatment on it. And I took it home and I read it, and I read all about how do you do this? What's the process? What's the system? What's the belief behind it? And I wrote myself a spiritual mind treatment. Up until then in my life, my sinuses had always been congested. I'd never breathed through my nose, not since childhood, without the help of medications. And even with that, it was often a struggle and often difficult. I seem to be allergic to everything. So my treatment talked about how there's only one power, and that power is life, and it's bringing life to all parts of me. It went on and talked about that therefore my body responds perfectly, and since it's all made of God, there's nothing in the atmosphere, the universe, the world around me that could do harm to me or even wanted to. And I created this whole image of my sinuses being lined with Teflon. So little pieces of pollen wouldn't stick, and other things wouldn't stick, and everything would go clean and clear. And I wrote it, and it was a bit facetious, actually, the way I wrote it, because I was like, okay, we're going to this. I don't really think this is going to work, but let's try it and see. And I made the commitment to do it every day. I read it every morning, and I would work it out. I was intrigued enough that I kept going back on Sundays, coming in late, sitting in the back, leaving early before I had a chance, anybody to try to get me to be a member. Oh my goodness. Assuming they were after something from me. They weren't. There were about 800 people involved at that time. So one more wasn't that big a deal. But I didn't know that. I was hiding out. So what happened was, after about 6 weeks, I noticed I wasn't taking my as needed medication to keep my nose clear. I just had forgotten about it because I wasn't using it anymore. And in another week or two, I was not taking any medication for sinuses, for allergies, for any of that. And I was breathing free and clear through my nose. And I went, oh dear, this is wonderful. And this is calling forth something new from me that I never imagined myself to ever be doing, which is diving into a whole new way of thought and living and faith. So the science of mind for me, and at that moment, became a curiosity, a challenge, and a very big part of what was to be the rest of my life. Since then, I went on to classes. I went on and dug into the teaching. I read everything I could find about it. I got to know some people in the group, and slowly we began to go into brunch every Sunday after church. That was our social life, part of our social life. And my life began to change and transform. I began to do things and participate in things before that I never imagined I could do. I knew I wanted them. They talked about this conference out on the West Coast and at a Cedarmore, this beautiful location. And I thought, I don't have the money for that. But man, I would love to go. And somehow the next year, the money was there and we went and stood not far from where I'm standing right now, because I'm in Santa Cruz, California, looking out at the ocean. I'm sorry I can't show you because then you couldn't see me. And and there I was. Later in my life, in this teaching, as I grew into into being a minister and being a practitioner before that, I had always dreamed of Machu Picchu. It was the only color picture in my growing up World Book Encyclopedia. We had the black and white version, and there were about 4 or 5 through the whole thing, color pictures. One of them was Machu Picchu. And sure enough, a few years later, there I found myself in Machu Picchu. Now, none of that just happened magically. But what happened was I changed my consciousness and my belief systems so that these things begin to unfold for me. And I've made numerous trips back there since then and to other places in the world, because travel to me is such an exciting thing. There's such a great world of experience and things to see and do and participate in and honor and celebrate and welcome. And that had been my life dream and goal. So I'm absolutely here to tell you that it is possible to do what Maya talked about. It's always room for growth. I have not arrived anywhere other than at a greater depth of truth and appreciation for the great mystery that God is, that Spirit is, that life is, even though it is not that mysterious, because it is all that we are and all that we show up as. So I have a couple of things to share with you today about how. I mean, to me, spirituality and religion, I first read about pragmatic religion when I was working on a Master of Divinity degree, and that the idea that American pragmatism says that unless something has a practical application, it's probably useless. Excuse me. Well, I don't believe anything is that really useless. But what is important to me is that our belief systems, our spirituality, our sense and connection with this thing we call God has a practical application and purpose in our lives to bring greater love, to bring greater freedom, to bring greater prosperity, to bring a greater sense of being alive and well. So I want to share 2 different systems that I have used over these years as ways in which to build and build and build and build this consciousness of good, this expectation that God is good and good is for me right here and right now and always. And I don't have to make limitations on it. I don't have to pretend it's something it isn't. I just have to get very clear in my own consciousness what I believe. So the first of those was something I called PACT, P-A-C-T, to make a pact with myself to do these things in order to live a greater, freer, more full life. And the pact had four letters and therefore four parts. The pact that is the P is pay attention to my thought. And that one takes some learning. If you're new to all of this and you say, well, I know what I'm thinking, but do you really? Do you know where your mind goes when you're sitting at the traffic light waiting for it to change? Or when you don't have anything specifically engaging and involving your mind so that your attention, your thoughts just kind of travel to whatever. And it becomes really important in this teaching to pay attention and learn to pay attention. What is it I'm continuously, habitually thinking about? Am I thinking about, ain't it awful? Am I sitting at the red light wondering if somebody's going to tear open my door and steal my car? Am I wondering or just ruminating in my head about the past, things that used to be, things that used to happen, and things that might be the same or different or worse in the future? And I suggest you do that to begin with. And encourage people and myself. I carried a little 3x5 card in my pocket, and at random times of the day, when I would think about it, or I had an alarm on my clock on my watch that would go off at different times, and it would go off. And at that moment, what am I thinking about? Oh, wow, and write it down. So I began to gather information in terms of paying attention to my thinking. And with the intention and the idea that I would move toward greater thinking about my good, not about the problems that might be going on. And also just to give me a picture of myself, what's going on here. The A of PACT is one that Kennedy Schultz used to talk about, and I loved hearing him talk about it. It's like, always speak highly of yourself, especially to yourself. But he would go on to say, but maybe not in public, because it's always socially acceptable. It's not socially acceptable to always speak highly of yourself, but it's always spiritually necessary. And I really loved that. And I love that idea and began to really work with it, because most of the time I didn't. I still occasionally catch myself saying I'm sorry for stuff that I have no business being sorry for, and find myself and back in those early days, though, I really did not think too much of me. And I was one of those people who hid in the crowd. I could be in a group of people, go to a dinner party with a group of people, not say a word and be invisible, and people not even realize that I had been there until it was all over and I was gone. And then as I began to wake up and pay attention and always speak highly of myself in my own mind, I began to realize that what I had to say mattered, what I thought mattered. Not only to me, but it might matter to someone else. And so I began to share it. And my life went through a whole transformation where I'm now standing in front of a camera talking to you, looking at the beach. I mean, it's pretty wonderful. And never in my wildest dreams back in those days did I think I would be doing this kind of anything like this kind of life or this kind of work. Always speak highly of yourself, to yourself and to others, because that has changed in our world. Depending on the tone and the way in which you do it, to speak highly of yourself to other people is really okay these days. It changed and transformed, as did the method for noticing and paying attention to your thoughts, which we've all got cell phones now. We have all sorts of ways to track what we're thinking and doing. And I encourage you to consider doing that. So pay attention to your thinking, always speak highly of yourself. And then the C is put consciousness first. And it's a kind of a fun little reminder that in the word react and create has the same letters as react, but the C is in the front of the word and not buried in the middle somewhere. So always when something's going on, when you see a problem, when there seems to be something messing up in your life or in the world, go to consciousness. What's the consciousness behind that? What's the thought? What's the belief? What's the feeling? What's the idea? And as you start to pay attention to that, your consciousness begins to grow and expand. And you begin to be aware that oh my goodness, I have this habitual thought of being a victim, of my world not working because I'm being victimized, or I'm victimized by what's happening. And as we get clear about that, we begin to have the opportunity to make different choices, to stop ourselves, to use interruptions in our thinking to get away from that. One of the things I learned in the 12-step program was to if you're going to obsess about something, why not obsess about a good idea? So when you find those things just rolling around in your head, replace it. Instead of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, something terrible is going to happen. But that there would be a really difficult, noisy way to say, God is good. God is good. God is good. I am good. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good. You know, if you start repeating that when you've got one of those squirrels going in your head, it's interesting how soon the squirrel loses interest and you begin to feel better, and maybe you could go back to sleep if it's happening in the middle of the night. So the fourth idea of making a pact with yourself is treat. Learn how to do spiritual mind treatment. It is a specific scientific method for prayer that changes our consciousness, not God's, because God's just fine. God's been doing God for a long time. Everything's doing well. But we are the ones with the challenge. So our versions of life need to be shifted and changed. Spiritual mind treatment helps us change our minds and eliminate those ideas and thoughts and beliefs based on old history and old truth, because the truth is life begins anew in every moment. We know that from quantum physics. We know that from understanding time and understanding how creation works on the subatomic level. It starts brand new every moment, every nanosecond. It looks like it's continuous, but just like the film, you know, you see a film and it looks like it's a continuous moving thing. But on the old film in the old days, and maybe now, there were boxes, and each one was slightly different than the one before it, and each one was separate. That's kind of how life is unfolding for us. That's how the world works. We go through this constant, it is flowing so quickly and so richly and so fully that we don't see the breaks, nor should we. But we can change it on a dime. Because of that, we can turn around and go a different direction. And this is where my treatment with the sinuses came in, and more treatments about so many different things since then. Now, the first time I did this talk or a similar presentation to this at CSL Midtown, Atlanta, our beloved Ross Cheers, who was a practitioner before I even knew about this teaching, and has since made his transition, is no longer with us on the planet, but it's with us in our minds and hearts. He made the statement afterwards. He was always offering me corrections, which was all done in love and done in fun, because we had a lot of fun about that. He came up to me after the service and said, I got another letter for you. It's not a pact, it's a PACS, PACTS. And the S is support. Get support of others who think like you do, who are on a path towards more positive good in their lives, and let them support you. Whether that's a practitioner, whether it's being part of a community like CSL Midtown, whether it's some other thing you haven't thought of. But it's a very necessary part of growing and building, to have the support around you. Someone said to me this last week in a meeting that look at your 5 closest friends, and the 5 people you spend the most time with, that will tell you who you are. Not because you need to do anything about them, but simply because it gives us a picture of where our support network is and the kinds of thoughts and ideas and beliefs that are being supported. So you may need to find a support network that's different from your current one. I used to do a lot of work as a therapist among alcohol and families with alcoholism and other addictions. And one of the first things we do is you got to get a new group of friends, because if your friends are supporting your using, It's not going to help you get sober. It's not going to help you stay sober and find a richer, bigger, deeper life because they don't know how. There's nothing wrong with them. They just don't know. Find a support network, a support, and this community provides that. This is a tight-knit, beautiful community of people who are committed, who love each other, who love this idea, the teaching, and want to, and will carry it. Not want to, they will carry it forward from this moment. I'm, as you probably know by now, this is my last talk as senior minister. I'm retiring, but this community is not ending. And these wonderful, wonderful people who you've seen some of and who you heard from today with Maya are going forward in building this community. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But before I do, I want to tell you about one other thing. In terms of growing that expectation of good, that expectation of life being what you want it to be, there is, my apologies. I just distracted myself. Mind is a terrible thing to waste. Shiny things. You know how that is. Squirrel. Oh, yeah. Well, coming back to where we are, this other process is called fear to faith. And it's part of a larger co-creation process in which we take a solid look and look straight at those things you fear the most, because fear is what holds us back from faith. Fear is what stands against our faith. Fear is what would say, the fear actually is faith in something we don't want. So if we can look at our fears and shift and change those into a positive idea, then our lives unfold in a more positive direction. So that being true, then, and again, we teach Fear to Faith, the Center for Spiritual Living. Folks have access to that information and they can help you. There's some stuff, there was some things about it on the website. I think it's still there. Investigate it, find out. Ernest Holmes said in the textbook, this is not about turning away from what's really happening in ourselves or in the world. It's not pretending there's good when there isn't. It's not about lying to ourselves. It is about looking any discordant fact in the face squarely and looking at it and going deeper into it until you see through it to the greater good. That can be a challenge. It can be a challenge in worldview. It can be a challenge in our own personal views of ourselves. But it becomes less of a challenge when you're always speaking highly of yourself to yourself, because then things start to shift in what they mean and how they make sense or don't make sense. Instead of thinking there's something wrong with me, you begin to realize that my current confusion is simply the opportunity for something more to come forward. Confusion means you're about to step into something greater. Not knowing means there's something within you that knows that's ready to reveal to you, and it's not going to be based on the past and what you used to think. Something in you knows the better idea. So, as I said, this is my last talk as your senior minister. I have some mixed emotions about that. I'm very sad and I'm very happy because I'm stepping off into a new adventure of my own as a retired minister. Well, there's no such thing as retiring from ministry, but there is such a thing as retiring from particular assignments or jobs, and that's what I'm doing. And as you go forward as a community, and I think as our whole movement goes forward as a community, there is one vitally important thing that has to happen for it to be successful. So get out your pens and paper. Here it is. Most important thing to do moving forward is to move from a minister-centric organization to a community and mission-centric organization. Other mainline denominations learned that a long time ago. And the ones that have continued to be successful are the ones where everybody knows the mission and purpose of why they're there. Whether the minister up front is somebody they like or don't like, they're there because it is purposeful and they're on a mission to be part of something. For us to, as we move forward, and as this group, and we have, as I said, we have a strong leadership group here. that is in the process of defining and redefining what is the mission, and then calling all of you to it. So whoever you are out there on listening, whether you're one of the regulars on our meeting in person on the first Sundays of the month, whether you are someone who just watches once in a while, whatever your role, however this is influencing you, I invite and encourage you to let this community become part of your support network, and to become part of the support network to the community, as the mission and vision of teaching spiritual principle in a way that brings change to everyone's lives continues to go forward. See, you're the best. You're the best at the Center for Spiritual Living. And what we have done over the last 5 years is create this core of strong leaders who've been freed up to bring their gifts in a great and wonderful and powerful way. I encourage you to support it and join it, because as I leave and as you go forward, only wonderful and amazing things can come from it. Because you will do amazing things. Polsky?
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing. You will do amazing things with the choice each new day brings, and with every step you take, bless the progress that you make. The reason you live is there in every gift you give. Love your life, love your dreams. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. The places you will go and the people you will know. Don't worry when, where, or how. You don't need to know that now. You're on the right track. No need to look ahead or back.
Nice, big stereo.
This day brings, and you will do amazing. Just stay in the here and now. Let your mind rest for a little while. Sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So close your eyes, take a breath, and smile. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing.